Hello and welcome to a very important edition of Spotlight on Jackson County. Today we're going to be talking with Dr. Sherman Blackwell. He is the Director of Singing River Services. Dr. Blackwell, really appreciate you coming into the studio and being on the show. We have got some major things that are going to be happening or that are going to be better for us in Jackson County and the counties that you serve.
Absolutely. And first of all, Doug, let me say thank you for having me on the program. Certainly do appreciate that because there are a lot of things that are happening in a lot of different arenas, and I understand that, but nothing is more that affects us more than on a local level. And of course, when you talk about behavioral health or mental health issues, that's something that affects everybody at some point and some time. It's going to affect a family member, a colleague, or something to that effect. And you having me here today, I certainly do appreciate that. And there are changes that I've alluded to, and these changes that are coming basically break down into the U.S. Department of Justice came into the state of Mississippi a little over a year ago due to a lawsuit that was pretty much initiated by the Southern Poverty Law Center and others that got involved that have been involved in other states, saying fundamentally that there were not enough services being offered at the community level. And so the investigation began. It began in other southern states, Georgia being one particularly, and ended up in kind of a lawsuit there that changed things. Here in the state of Mississippi, they have been here and they're talking about the changes that need to be made, basically saying that most of the emphasis has been on conventional or institutional services and that more should be invested in community mental health. Now, I didn't say that. The U.S. Department of Justice did. So you can't, they were involved, as mentioned, because of a lawsuit with different organizations that came into town. We work very good with the Department of Mental Health. We think they have great staff and great leadership with Ed LeGrand, and who is a proponent of community-based services. The trick is to get the money to follow the person. When you're dealing with substantial amounts of money, and Mississippi's budget, overall budget, I guess is somewhere around $3 billion, and you're talking about $300 million in community mental health services, and even more if you attach Medicaid, and more of that being emphasized in the community because the data is specific. The data has been in other states for decades now, that an individual with everybody has problems. Everybody can have, I'm not just talking about somebody that may have a divorce or a death, and you have those kinds of issues that sometimes are transient, sometimes are not, but we're talking about major mental illnesses, individuals with chronic schizophrenia, some form of that, bipolar disorder, with major depression or some residual of that, anxiety disorders and some residual of that. So we're talking about people that have psychotic issues and those kinds of things, and the data is that they can be served better in the community.
Because the community affords them something that an institution can't, and that's a support system that resides in the community. It might be their parents, their aunts, their uncles, their brothers, their sisters, their pastor. All of these people are there for them, and they can rely on them. If you institutionalize somebody like in another city somewhere in Mississippi, then that support system is harder for them to get to.
That's an excellent point. And let me say this before I carry that point forward. There will always be a need for a place where you will have chronic refractory individuals that are just not going to do as well in the community. There will always be a need for an institution, a place where they can get the appropriate care. But you're exactly right. The data, here again, an individual in the community with the appropriate support, that being a clinician, that being case management services, that is someone in the community, that is to facilitate them, helping them, watching them, visiting them daily. That is our clubhouse program where the individual can go and learn or can talk, and now they're switching over to where, which is good, to talk about their illness and understand more about their illness. But 50% of the population that I've identified are going to decompensate at some point in time. They're going to quit taking their medicine. The medicine is not going to be effective. It's going to need changing. And for some reason, one way or the other, and many times the behavior that goes along with that, of course, is out of the norm. And so if an individual, if there's a place, and this happens in adjacent counties to us, Jeff Bennett over at Gulfport, if you have a crisis stabilization unit and you have it appropriately staffed with individuals, with psychiatrists, with nurse practitioners, psychiatric nurses, the data is they can come in and based upon that performance, now here again, a certain percentage of those folks are going to need longer term care, but a greater percentage of those folks are going to be treated within a 7 to 21 day period of time, and then they're going to be back in the community. Your point was if they're sent away, they're going to be away for certain, then they ultimately 80% of the time they're going to come back to the same community. So the sooner they're back in the community, the more and the better they're integrated in the community and turned around in the community. It saves a whole lot. It saves cost, hospital, it saves community, it may save the county a lot when you're talking about the issues that come along when someone has a breakdown with mental illness. So they're back in the community, you're exactly right, and they're served better here, and they're back in, and less money, less time, and they can be seen and they can be served. That's a fact. Data is there. That's not just me talking, not wishful thinking. That is what needs to happen, and it's very slow to turn those bureaucratic ships around.
You know, it not only saves money, but more than likely, and I may go on a limb to say this, the patient probably does better in a shorter amount of time than if you'd had institutionalized them and then sent them back into the community.
They're going to do better. Their lives are very important, and if they don't get that appropriate care, many of them, you're exactly right, they end up transient, in jail, in the hospital, or dead. And we have great institutions here. We do. They are very well. They can get good help. But here again, when we're living in an age of $4 plus gasoline and costs are beginning to be exponential in everything, when you don't know what the medical side of a lot of things are going to happen in the next period of time, it is, not only is it best, but it's just smarter to serve people in the local community. So I do want to make it clear, when we talk about the U.S. Department of Justice, they came to the state of Mississippi. They didn't come to any particular community mental health center. They came and they dealt with issues as they have dealt with, and Mississippi shouldn't feel isolated. They've done it with other states in the union, you know, and they've come here now, and they're just saying they're the guys who are going to give you, you know, they're going to have the purse strings and the government and have the recommendations to other agencies about how the funding comes down.
But they're using the models of successful states and all of the data that has been collected and proven models from other states, and that's what they're going by. They're not just picking a figure out of the air. They've studied this, they know what they're doing, and they're trying to help. And this is ultimately going to be better for the people of the counties that Singing River Mental Health Services serves, plus the whole state of Mississippi.
Yes, absolutely.
This is not a bad thing.
It's really not a bad thing. It's one of those things where your money can be spent much more wisely and get more bang for the buck, if you will, because of these. It's up to 80% successful with the individuals becoming known in the community, keeps them out of jail, keeps them out of the hospital. Not 100% of the time, but a bunch of the time. It is better. There are 15 regional community mental health centers, Doug, in the state of Mississippi, serving 130,000 individuals, that's on the low side, with some type of mental illness.
Well, everybody has stressors that can, we all do, that can affect you in a lot of different ways, and a lot of times you don't realize that those stressors are actually affecting you physically. And boy, can they do that. And a lot of times people just say, oh, well, it's just, heartburn, or oh, well, it's just this. And they don't realize what's going on. And to be able to get help in the community itself is really a good thing, allowing you to stay here and allowing you to get help at the same time.
Absolutely. Yeah, some of the signs that people would be surprised, depression can be chronic body pain. It doesn't always mean withdrawal. It doesn't always have that particular bullet point about it, but it can manifest itself in several different ways, of course. Depression, chronic issues, hurting, those kinds of things, and certainly better. It's about, and one of the things we try to do, and one of the things that we're about, along with other community mental health centers, not only here but across the nation, is trying to educate, get the information out there about that. But you're exactly, we have a tendency as human beings, I think, for the most part, to postpone or put off or to ignore until it's really knocking on your door, until that elephant's really sitting on your chest.
Yes, and then it really gets your attention. And that's when most people do it. And if they would get a little bit of earlier intervention, they might not get that bad.
Well, we see a lot of it, Doug. You see it in Colorado campus and shootings, and of late you see it, of course, television and communications and social networking and all that bring everything in on you real quick, which kind of makes those stressors even more acute. But you see it's prevalent. You see, like the shooter in Colorado, the so-called joker, had all of this interaction even with a psychiatrist to a certain degree. We don't know all about that and won't know for some time if we do then, but that just bottom lines it, that you've got to have communication, and you can't take gestures and comments too lightly.
No. Doc, we're going to have to take a short break here, but don't go away. We'll be right back with more interesting information with Dr. Sherman Blackwell, the Director of Singing River Services. Getting a lot. Welcome back to Spotlight on Jackson County. We are continuing our conversation with Dr. Sherman Blackwell, the Director of Singing River Mental Health Services. And Dr. Blackwell, we were talking about these changes that are going to happen, and they're going to be good changes. They're not going to be bad, and about the Department of Justice and how all this came about. But I want to congratulate you. Jim Hood has appointed you to a committee that is going to be very important. You're going to be on that committee until 2014, and you're going to come up with a strategic plan on how to implement these changes that have been recommended by DOJ, and assure that we get our piece of the pie down here. Maybe
I can't say that. I certainly hope so. There are 15 people who, beginning actually really the first of this year, but an appointment was made in December of last year, that were appointed by the Attorney General on a strategic planning committee whose goal is to have dialogue for 3 years to do the interaction with the U.S. Department of Justice and report back to the Attorney General's office, the Governor's office, how best to facilitate these changes or have a roadmap, as you mentioned, during the break. How do you get there? This is comprised of, I am one of three community mental health center directors. Others are like Dr. Norquist, the head of psychiatry at UMC, and other people in the community, high-profile folks, to help connect, to first understand what will and what cannot be done. And the goal, of course, is to avoid any particular lawsuits or mandates by U.S. Department of Justice, and to work in tandem with the Department of Mental Health, the Department of Justice, and to help see how best services can be grown at the community-based level and where they might need to be shifted from an institutional level, to be honest with you.
Bottom line is y'all are going to decide, and I know you're totally committed to this, is to how better serve people in the community who have mental health issues.
That is the bottom line.
It's a bottom line.
That is the bottom line, and I'm glad. Here again, I want to thank you for having me on the program. I try to articulate that through our program, but it's good to be able to talk about the changes that are coming. Changes are happening everywhere. You can talk with people in the hospital business, you can talk with local doctors, you can talk about all of those kinds of things. So we're not the only group that is dealing with this, and every group, of course, thinks that they're, have the prettiest dog in the hunt, so to speak, or whatever. So
theirs is the most important.
Yeah, well, and I do take issues, because when you're dealing with the population that we deal with, sometimes they do get thrown under the bus. It's a difficult job. We have great staff. It's challenging at times when you deal with people who don't know how to deal, with just the day-to-day issues. So, my hat's off to people that are involved in this, and a lot has to do with the other 14 regional community mental health centers throughout the state.
Well, nothing happens without good leadership, and I just want to say this on the show. I mean, you provide fantastic leadership for Singing River Services. You really do. And I want to thank you for the job you're doing in Jackson and George County, and you serve any other counties, Jackson and George?
Jackson and George, that's correct.
Because nothing happens without great leadership, and it's obvious that Jim Hood thought that too, or you wouldn't be on that committee. So I want to say thank you for that. Thank you for what the program that you bring to people that explains what's going on and the services that y'all are offering. And thank you for coming on this show and telling everybody in our viewing area the changes that are coming in place. They're not bad. This is not a bad thing. This is going to be a good thing. You're coming up with a strategic plan. This is going to probably, more than likely, I would say 100% improve the service delivery system, the funding maybe, if everything works out right, but it's just going to benefit people. It's really easy for a medical doctor to go into the office and say, my abdomen hurts, do an x-ray, oh, you got a tumor, oh, we're going to send you to the surgeon, oh, he takes it out, okay, sews you up, yep, go home, you're great now. It's not that easy to diagnose.
That's good.
And it's not that easy to treat someone with a mental health issue, because each and every one of those mental health issues have their own little nuances that you have to diagnose and find out and come up with a way to treat. So your job and the people, the great staff that you have, your job is very complicated, but you have a dedicated staff, and I've seen them, I've met them, I've seen them on your show, and we are fortunate to have such a service organization as Singing River Services in our area.
There's been a lot of groundwork. It's been 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. Not only here, but in a lot of areas. We do have those things, and thank you for saying that. We do have a great staff. People normally don't like to deal with mental health issues, really want them to go away. But you're exactly right. When I started in this business, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual was about this thick, and that was the Bible, if you will, of mental health, mental illness. And now, you know, it's this thick, which I don't know if that's a good sign or not, but I think it is due to more information, more discovery. But you're exactly right. Many things to do with, and they're trying to there's some success at looking at and brain disorders and trying to make them where they're just purely a physiological thing, but that's just not the case. That's just there's an abstract personality to mental illness that can't always be seen under the microscope, and there are a lot of contributing factors to that, whether that comes physically or whether that comes communicably or socially or genetically, as I mentioned, or through the family. It's difficult. It'd be easy. It'd be nice to say, hey, got a cavity, we're gonna pull the tooth.
It's not that easy, but in the years past, I can remember they were institutionalized and people basically forgot about them. And thank God we're not doing that as much anymore. And like you said, if that is what needs to be done, by all means, there's a need for that. But the fact that you're able to...
There's no need to forget about them now.
No need to forget about them.
There's going to be a need for, yes, where people are going to need 24/7 care.
And in today's society, I mean, it is stressful. I mean, you're talking about an economy that's bad. You're talking about high prices. People out there trying to raise children, send kids to school, send kids to college, make enough money to buy groceries and gasoline and pay electric bills, and all these things are going up. And God forbid they have a serious issue that happens in the family, divorce, somebody dies, all of these things.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they're just like a big elephant sitting on top of you sometimes. And sometimes people just get to the point, they'll just try to keep going and going and going and going and going, and then all of a sudden, boom.
Yeah. Life at its best, if you have a stable approach to it, just for your life or for anyone, that the challenges of, as you mentioned, at the risk of being redundant, making tending children, taking care of finances, taking care. So all of these things, and then the acute. If you can imagine someone with a mental illness, and this caregiver has been with them for all their life, and then they're gone, and the things that they hear, the things that they see. If they're part of a nuclear family, it certainly affects them, because that's just going to be passed along. And so their coping mechanisms are not going to be as acute as yours. So it's important. It's important to find out about a person's strengths, regardless. A person is not a schizophrenic. A person is a person with schizophrenia. and it's to find out their strengths and their abilities, sure their limitations, sure they're sick, but they have good days, and they're great doctors, they're great medicines, they're great support systems in the community that can help individuals. The data, when you talk about the individuals with disabilities, individuals living longer, doing better, making more positive contributions to the community.
And that's what it's all about, keeping them here and keeping that support system going for them, actually making it easier for them, and promote a faster recovery and return them to the community so that they can be productive again and their families can have that person back.
Exactly.
That's what it's all about. And
let me add real quickly, I know, but sometimes just going in the hospital or going into a unit, just kept for just a little bit. You got to have a qualified amount of time to do that, and it's 7 to 21 days or so. It's not just getting them stabilized so that they're not in a 2-day or a 3-day turnaround. That doesn't work.
No.
Not going to work.
No. Well, we have been talking about the changes that are going to be coming, and we've had Dr. Blackwell, Dr. Sherman Blackwell, who's the director of Singing River Services, here in the studio with us. Thank you so much, Dr. Blackwell, for again, what your staff and what you do for the community. I think it's a vital resource that we have that a lot of people don't know about. And like you said before on your show, you really don't think about it until it hits your family, and you've got to deal with it. But there should be some comfort. Heaven forbid that anybody has to deal with it, but there should be some comfort that an organization such as yours is here for us in the community. We want to say thank you.
Thanks
so much. Thank you for being on the show.
Thanks.
And thank you for watching this very special and informative edition of Spotlight on Jackson County. Join us again next time for another great show. We'll see you then.